Picture this. You are standing in a massive queue outside a single-screen theater in Hyderabad. It is a sweltering Friday morning, and you are there for the highly anticipated uh, first show of a massive Telugu tentpole film.
Oh yeah, the energy there is unmatched. The 60-foot cutouts, the fans chanting, it is absolutely electric.
Exactly. So you step into the dark auditorium expecting high-octane action, heavy emotional drama, and of course the hero's massive slow-motion entry. And you are definitely expecting that thumping A.R. Rahman background score vibrating right in your chest.
But as you find your seat and that massive screen lights up, I can guarantee you probably aren't thinking about the specific shade of yellow on the screen, right?
Right. Or, the meticulously calculated level of luminance in the shadows of the hero's face.
Because it is entirely invisible to the conscious mind, and yet what feels to you like a completely natural, dusty, sun-baked rural landscape is actually a highly engineered commercial asset. It is manipulated down to the individual pixel.
Which brings us to the mission for today's deep dive.
Mm.
We are looking at a truly fascinating 2026 case study titled Andreas Brueckl's Post-Productive Narrative Strategy of Peddi.
Yes, authored by Professor Bandaru Srinivasa Rao from the Department of Management Studies at VFSTR Deemed University.
Okay, let's unpack this. We used to think of color correction as basically just a post-production chore, just fixing the lighting so the sky looks blue and the skin tones look somewhat normal.
But now, according to the study, it functions as an invisible marketeer. It is a fundamental structural tool for narrative storytelling. It manipulates audience psychology and, crucially, secures absolute dominance on digital OTT streaming platforms.
To understand the stakes of this shift, we really have to establish the sheer scale of the film at the center of this study. Peddi, released in 2026, is a pan-India sports action drama directed by Bucci Babusana.
And the budget is a staggering 350 crore rupees. That is roughly 42 million US dollars.
Yeah, and you have a cast featuring massive names. Ram Charan, Shivaraj Kumar, Janjavi Kapoor, Jagapati Babu.
The thing is, when a production house is deploying 350 crore for a film with a massive 189-minute runtime, they're not leaving a single variable to chance.
Absolutely not. Every frame, every shadow, every highlight carries immense financial weight. And the visual architect carrying that weight is the acclaimed director of photography, R. Rathnavelu.
Professor Rao's study actually features a quote from him that really stood out.
Yeah.
He describes the process by saying, "Shoot it in the light, grade it in the dark. Hectic days, sleepless nights, all for the big screen."
That quote captures a profound technical reality of modern blockbuster cinema, I think. The look of a raw 1980s Andhra village isn't something you could just capture on location under the harsh Indian sun.
Right, the camera just captures the raw data. But the emotional texture of that 1980s village is manufactured entirely in a dark room in Hyderabad.
See, for decades, film analysts have dissected screenplays, dialogue, editing rhythms to understand how movies make us feel. But color grading has remained this largely under-examined lever.
Precisely because it operates entirely beneath our cognitive filters.
I was actually thinking about this while going through the research, and the best analogy I can come up with is the background score of a movie.
Oh, that is a great way to look at it.
Right. When you are watching a really tense, nail-biting sequence, you aren't actively sitting there analyzing the string section or the specific notes the cellos are playing.
No, you are just feeling the tension.
Exactly. That music is entirely dictating your physiological response. It is making your heart rate spike, it is making your palms sweat. Color grading is essentially doing the exact same thing, but through your optic nerve. It is the visual background score.
And the neuroscience actually backs up that analogy perfectly. Both auditory cues from a score and visual frequencies from color palettes are processed by the amygdala.
The brain's emotional center.
Yes, right
Okay.
before the prefrontal cortex can even logic out what is happening on screen. Just as A.R. Rahman writes musical motifs for different characters, a colorist and a cinematographer are composing chromatic themes.
They are deploying specific light wavelengths to trigger precise biological and psychological responses in you, the viewer.
But doing that for a standard 2-hour movie is one thing. Peddi is 189 minutes long.
Yeah, so how exactly did Rathnavelu structure a visual score for an epic of that length? Without exhausting the audience's eyes or letting the emotional tension just sag.
Well, the risk of visual fatigue over 3 hours is massive. Rathnavelu understood this, and the case study notes he actually looked outside the typical mass action genre for solutions.
Wait, really? What kind of films was he looking at?
Globally acclaimed non-spectacle films, movies like Oppenheimer and The Brutalist. He wanted to understand how they sustained engagement over long run times.
Oh, I see.
He realized he couldn't just have one continuous look for the whole film. He had to visually map the cinematography directly onto the protagonist's life journey.
So they built a highly rigid visual architecture, breaking the film down into 4 distinct life stages, really.
Exactly, and each phase is governed by an absolute non-negotiable color palette.
And this is where the underlying psychology gets deeply intentional. Let's look at the beginning of the film. We start with the protagonist as a young village cricketer.
Phase 1.
Right. The palette governing this entire section is saturated with warm earth tones. Lots of amber, deep yellows. It intuitively signals nostalgia, innocence, and communal belonging.
What's fascinating here is how Professor Rao anchors this in Eliot and Mayer's color and context psychological theory. This isn't just an artistic hunch.
It is backed by decades of empirical research, isn't it?
It is. Biologically, warm hues, the colors of fire, of dawn, of sunlight, trigger what psychologists call approach motivation.
Meaning we literally lean in.
Exactly. Our evolutionary wiring reads those wavelengths as safe, inviting, and nurturing. The audience is subliminally told, you are safe here, this is home.
But then the narrative violently ruptures. The character experiences profound disillusionment.
And the color gets ripped away. Phase 2.
Suddenly, the screen is dominated by desaturated greens and clinical grays. The contrast drops. It feels flat and cold.
Which makes perfect sense based on what we just said about approach motivation. If warm tones draw us in, stripping them away must trigger the opposite biological response.
Right, Eliot and Mayer define it as withdrawal or avoidance motivation. Cool, desaturated tones read to our brains as sterile, overcast, or alien.
It visually prepares your nervous system for the character's internal moral ambiguity. You feel his alienation in your gut because your eyes are literally processing an alienating light frequency.
Now wait, let me push back on this universal biological framework for a second. The Eliot and Mayer theories are foundational, sure, but they are primarily based on Western standardized testing environments.
That is a very fair point.
Because Professor Rao's case study doesn't just rely on them. He also brings in a 2024 study by Amoljit and colleagues that specifically focuses on South Asian cinema.
Yes, the Amoljit study is crucial here. They argue that color carries a highly specific regional, socioeconomic, and cultural weight.
So I look at that first phase again, the dust gold of the Andhra village. Does that highly saturated amber trigger the same memory for a Telugu audience in Hyderabad as it does for someone streaming the movie in New York?
Probably not in the exact same way, no.
Right, because the Western viewer might just read it as warm and sunny. But to a local viewer, that specific color of dust is a tangible memory of the 1980s.
That is exactly the genius of Rathnavelu's strategy. He is layering the biology and the sociology. In Indian cinema, that dusty yellow isn't just a lighting choice.
It is a semiotic shortcut.
Exactly. A shortcut for earthiness, grassroots struggle, and a very specific type of regional nostalgia. So for the Telugu audience, that color palette unlocks a deep cultural memory. It provides period authenticity.
But underneath that cultural layer, the fundamental shift from warm to cold still operates on the universal biological level that Eliot and Mayer document.
Precisely. It functions as a universal emotional language, but it is being spoken with a highly specific, hyperlocal accent.
Which brings us to the third phase of the visual architecture. The protagonist transitions into a wrestler, the Peddi Pehlewan.
And the visual language radically shifts again. The screen fills with deep ochres, burnt sienna, and incredibly heavy, crushing shadows.
The shadows are what really fascinate me there. Why introduce such heavy darkness when you are trying to showcase a massive action star in a wrestling sequence?
Because shadows create volume. By crushing the blacks and amplifying the deep ochre highlights, the cinematography emphasizes the physical mass, the sweat, and the sheer grit of the human body.
So it communicates raw kinetic power.
Exactly. And finally, when the film reaches its climax and resolution, that's phase 4, the visual parameters open up entirely. The dynamic range expands.
The golden hour tones return, but they aren't the dusty yellows of the beginning. It is a cleaner, broader spectrum of light. It feels like taking a deep breath after being submerged underwater.
Professor Rao connects this back to Bordwell and Thompson's canonical film theory. They argue that color in cinema must be understood as a formal system.
Meaning, it is not just decorative wallpaper applied after the fact.
Right. It is a structural, load-bearing pillar of the narrative, carrying exactly as much weight as the script or the editing rhythm. Over 189 minutes, these 4 phases serve as invisible chapter breaks.
So the audience is conditioned to understand the protagonist's internal evolution without the director relying on clumsy expositional dialogue. You know exactly where you are in the character's soul just by the temperature of the light.
And that's the goal, yes.
Okay, the theory is brilliant. Mapping a 3-hour psychological journey through light frequencies makes total sense on paper. But executing that seamlessly across a 350 crore tentpole
It
film,
is a massive undertaking.
a film that is going to be projected on single screens, IMAX theaters, and eventually streamed on millions of smartphones globally. That requires a level of mathematical precision and technical infrastructure that is just mind-boggling.
You definitely don't get that by just tweaking a slider in some basic editing software.
Absolutely not.
Hmm.
And this is where the case study pivots to the globalization of Indian post-production.
Right, because to execute a 4-phase formal system across thousands of screens without the colors breaking or banding, you need a technical architect. And in this case study, that architect is Andreas Brueckl.
Brueggel's background is fascinating. He is a German-born supervising colorist based in Hyderabad, and he recently joined Nagarjuna Akini's Annapurna Studios, working alongside their chief technology officer, C.V. Rao.
This isn't just about hiring a guy with a good eye. Brueckl brought an entirely new mathematical framework to the region.
Yeah, the study highlights that he was instrumental in introducing the ACES workflow to Asia at scale, and he graded India's very first HDR Dolby Vision feature film.
Let's break down why that technical pedigree matters so much. ACS stands for the Academy Color Encoding System. In modern filmmaking, you might shoot a scene on one type of camera, shoot the second unit action on a different camera, and then send the footage to 3 different VFX studios.
Across the globe, usually.
Exactly. Left to its own devices, all that color data would just clash.
Here's where it gets really interesting. It's like having 5 different contractors trying to build a house, but one is using meters, one is using inches, and one is just guessing by looking at their hands.
That is a perfect analogy. ACS is essentially a universal mathematical translator. It ensures that the color data captured on set is preserved flawlessly through every stage of visual effects, editing, and final grading.
And Brueggel's philosophy regarding this workflow completely upends how we traditionally view post-production.
Professor Rao includes a great quote from Brueckl at the Filmlight Awards. He said, "Getting involved early in the process is a dream for a colorist. Basically, we create the look way before the shoot itself."
That completely flicked my understanding of the process.
Yeah.
I mean, we literally call it post-production. It implies it happens after the fact.
Right. The traditional view is the director goes out, captures the movie, and then the colorist is brought in like a painter to slap a fresh coat of color over whatever the camera managed to catch.
But Brueckl is saying they are building the color pipeline at the script stage. It's like an architect baking the exact lighting conditions of a building into the structural blueprints before they even pour the foundation.
Instead of just buying some expensive lamps after the house is built and hoping it looks good.
Exactly. By establishing the ACS workflow and defining the 4 distinct visual palettes during pre-production, Brueckl and Rathnavelu are stabilizing the film's visual identity from day one.
They aren't trying to fix a scene to look like Phase 2 disillusionment in the edit bay. The camera monitors on set are already displaying the mathematically correct desaturated grays while they are filming.
And that stability is what allows the film to survive the brutal reality of global distribution. If you encode the film with that level of precision, you guarantee that the deep, heavy shadow of the wrestling phase looks exactly the same on a high-end OLED TV as it does compressed on a laptop screen.
But the case study goes further than just the technical achievement. Professor Rao argues that this highly engineered pre-production craft is the foundation of what he calls the invisible marketeer.
So this technical pipeline directly converts into tangible brand equity.
Yes. And this is where we get into Keller's brand equity framework. For anyone unfamiliar, Kevin Lane Keller is a titan in marketing theory.
His framework essentially argues that strong brand equity is built on distinct, memorable brand associations, right?
Exactly. When we think of a movie as a brand, and at 350 crore, Peddi is absolutely a massive corporate brand. Its visual identity is its most powerful asset.
Under Keller's model, a distinct visual identity drives immediate brand recall.
And because Brueckl and Rathnavelu engineered these 4 incredibly distinct, mathematically stable color phases, the marketing team now has 4 distinct visual sub-brands to play with.
I mean, think about how you consume media on your phone. You are scrolling through Instagram or YouTube Shorts at lightning speed.
And the marketing team cuts a 15-second teaser focusing purely on the Pehlwan wrestling phase.
Because that deep, high-contrast ochre was baked into the ACS pipeline, it pops aggressively even on a bright mobile screen.
Before the viewer even registers the actor's face or turns the sound on, their brain processes the color ochre. It recognizes the grit and tension and immediately associates it with the brand of Peddi.
The color itself is doing the heavy lifting of the digital marketing. It bypasses the need for context.
And the production team recognized the value of this early on. Months before the release, Rathnavelu was posting behind-the-scenes updates on his social media, specifically highlighting the grading process with Brueckl.
Oh, that is smart organic marketing.
Very smart. They were deliberately telegraphing their investment in this premium, internationally credentialed post-production workflow.
Which generates a massive amount of cultural capital. In the fiercely competitive landscape of Indian cinema, fans are incredibly savvy.
Oh, absolutely.
When they see the DOP working with the guy who brought ACS and HDR Dolby Vision to India, it sends a very clear signal. It says, we are treating this hero and this story with the absolute highest tier of technical respect.
It fuels the pre-release word of mouth. But while fan engagement is vital, Professor Rao points out that the true battlefield for a film's long-term financial survival is the digital OTT platform strategy.
Platforms like Netflix, Amazon Prime, Disney Plus, Hotstar.
Right. And this is where Brueckl's expertise in HDR Dolby Vision becomes less of an artistic choice and more of a brutal commercial necessity.
Explain how HDR Dolby Vision actually functions in that ecosystem, because we see that logo all the time on our TVs, but what does it actually mean for the algorithm?
Well, HDR, or high dynamic range, particularly the Dolby Vision standard, is essentially dynamic metadata. Unlike standard digital video where the color and brightness are fixed for the whole movie, Dolby Vision sends frame-by-frame instructions to your television.
Wow.
It literally tells the individual pixels on your screen exactly how bright to be and what precise shade to display for every single second of the film.
So the movie is actively communicating with the hardware.
Yes. And when a massive tentpole like Peddi is being evaluated for acquisition by an OTT platform, the platform's algorithm isn't sitting down to watch the movie to see if the story is moving.
Of course not. The algorithm reads the technical metadata.
Because Peddi was graded in Dolby Vision using a flawless ACEs pipeline, the algorithm immediately recognizes it as a premium technical asset.
It automatically qualifies for the highest streaming tiers. It gets that little coveted Dolby Vision badge next to the title.
And because the platform wants to show off its premium streaming capabilities, the algorithm is far more likely to push that film to the top of the viewer's homepage carousel.
And just as importantly, that metadata guarantees fidelity. It ensures that the wealthy Telugu diaspora viewer watching on a top-of-the-line home theater system in California experiences the exact same emotional resonance as a student streaming it on a budget mobile phone while riding a bus in rural Andhra Pradesh.
The color pipeline doesn't break, which means the narrative doesn't break.
So, synthesizing all of this, Professor Rao outlines 3 distinct positions on how the industry needs to view color grading today.
Yes. The first is aesthetic enhancement. That is the old school view. Color is just a craft refinement to make the frames look pretty.
The second position is narrative agency. This is the Elliott and Mayer approach, arguing that the color is the psychological story.
And the third position is the digital marketing angle. The Keller perspective, where color is a commercial brand asset weaponized for algorithmic dominance and sub-brand recall.
And the central tension of the case study revolves around how these 3 positions interact in the modern blockbuster ecosystem.
They absolutely do.
Right, but let me play devil's advocate here, particularly regarding that third position, the digital marketing and algorithmic dominance angle.
Okay, go ahead.
If a 350 crore movie have a terrible script, wooden acting, and no emotional core, audiences are going to reject it. No amount of HDR Dolby Vision metadata or perfectly executed ACS workflow is going to save a fundamentally boring movie, right?
I agree completely.
People don't sit through 3 hours of cinema just because the contrast ratios are optimized for an algorithm. So doesn't that mean color, despite all this incredible technology, is still entirely subordinate to the written story?
That is a very fair critique, and it is a common debate in film circles. You cannot reverse engineer a soul into a broken story using color science. But Professor Rao's argument is that in today's hyper-saturated, multi-platform economy, you can't view these 3 positions as an either-or scenario. They must operate simultaneously.
A brilliant script is the baseline.
Yes. The story is the soul. But if that brilliant script is poorly graded, if the visual identity isn't distinct enough to pop on Instagram, or if it lacks the HDR metadata required by the OTT algorithms, the platforms might not acquire it at a premium price.
And even if they do, the algorithm might just bury it underneath 50 other perfectly graded but mediocre films.
The technical pedigree, the color science, is the passport that allows the soul of the film to actually reach the audience. It is a due diligence requirement for modern digital distribution.
It is the vehicle delivering the emotion to the brain, completely intact no matter the screen size, which is a wild way to reframe how we watch movies.
It really is.
So for you listening, the next time you are scrolling through a streaming platform trying to find something to watch, or you are sitting in a theater on opening weekend waiting for the mass entry, take just a second.
Look past the explosions. Look past the star power.
Pay attention to the deep shadows. Notice the subtle shifts in saturation when a character faces a moral crisis. Because you aren't just looking at a pretty picture.
You are experiencing an invisible marketeer at work, meticulously guiding your neurobiology and delivering a highly engineered brand experience straight to your subconscious.
Once you understand the architectural framework underneath the image, it completely rewires how you consume visual media.
And I want to leave you with one final thought to mull over, extending this trajectory into the very near future. We just explored how color psychology has been broken down into a precise mathematical four-phase formula to guarantee your emotional engagement and satisfy an algorithm's requirements.
Yeah.
Given the rapid advancement of technology, how long until these streaming platforms use artificial intelligence to dynamically regrade the color of a film in real time? Frame by frame, based entirely on your specific user profile, your viewing history, and your current physiological mood detected right through your device's camera.
Oh, wow. That is both a fascinating and absolutely terrifying thought to end on. Thank you so much for joining us on this deep dive.